Okay, so I'm going to have a go at the next exercise in top interview questions in LeetCode. So it's called rotate array. Okay, given an array, rotate the array to the right by k steps where k is non-negative. So if we're given input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and k equals 3, then we rotate the array like that. Okay, so what it means by rotate is that we want to take the value off the end and move it to the front and move all the other values across. So if we rotate one step, we're going to do that. If we rotate 2 steps, we're going to get another step along. That would be 2 steps, and 3 steps we're moving the next one. So the answer of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rotated 3 steps is 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that corresponds with the answer they're giving there. Example 2, -1, -100, 3, 99. K is 2. That's just the same thing there. So constraints. Num's length is between 1 and 10 to the power of 5. So that fits in an integer range. And the numbers are between -2 to the power of 31 and 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. In other words, they're an integer. And k, which is the number of steps we want to rotate, is between 0 and 10 to the power of 5. So we're safe using an integer for all these. Try to come up with as many solutions as you can. There are at least 3 different ways to solve this problem. Could you do it in place with one extra space? Okay, so I'm going to explain the 3 different ways of doing this. Okay, the first way is going to be to make a new array the same length as the one we've got. Loop through the values. So we're going from index 0 up to index 6. We're going to take this value, add k onto the index and move it into that index. So 1, 2, 3 of our new array. We'll do the same for 2. The same for 3. But the thing is, as we go through, we're going to check to see if we overflow. What we can do is mod the length of the array from where we're putting it. So here we want to put it there into position 8, which is index 7. But if we do mod 7 on that 8 mod, which is the remainder of the division, then we'll divide the value by 7, the remainder will be 0, and we'll put it there. So then the 6, we're currently at index position 5, because remember we index from 0 in an array. So 5 plus 3 would be position 8. 8 mod 7 would be 1, so that goes back into position 1. And for 7, we want to put it into position 9. 9 mod 7 is 2, so that will go there. And then we can just set, well, because in the exercise question we weren't returning the array, we were actually modifying that array. So in order for this to work, we're then going to have to copy these values back over into that array. So that's not so great, but that is a way of doing it. Okay, Okay, so the second way we can do it, which uses 01 additional space that they asked for, is we could have a temporary buffer for one value. So we start by taking the value 7, the end value, and moving it into a temporary buffer. Then we can loop down through each number and move it across one. So this we're rotating once here. So we loop through and eventually get to the beginning. We've moved all our numbers across one, and then we take the value in our temporary buffer and move it to the start. And we've rotated one there. If we want to rotate 3 times, we could repeat that whole thing 3 times. So that would be a way that doesn't use, just uses one integer as extra space, but it's not going to be very efficient if we have to rotate many times. Now the third way of doing it, and the way that I think I'm going to choose, is to make a temporary array k values long. And we take the values from the array length minus k to the end, and we'll put them into our temporary buffer, and then we'll loop from the end to the start, moving our values k spaces back to the end. We'll move all our values k spaces to the right, and then when we've moved them all and we're k spaces from the beginning of the array, we'll go back to our temporary buffer and move these values back to the start. So this is the one that I'm going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a buffer array, and that's going to be k spaces long. Okay, now we want to loop through the buffer. I equals 0, I is a buffer dot length I plus plus, and the value in the buffer at I needs to become, let's work it out in here. So our loop is going 0, 1, 2. And the index of this array, I'm going to write in red. Okay, so we want the values here to be the index at 4. The length of the array is 7, so we want to say 7 minus k for the first value, and then we want to subtract the I in the loop from k. So I'm going to say buffer I equals nums at nums length minus k minus I. So the first time we're going to move the value at index 4 and then 5 and then 6 into our buffer. So that's what we've done so far. Now my next loop, I want to go from 3 to 0, and I want to move the number up k spaces. Now I'm actually not going from k3 there, I'm going from the length minus k minus 1. So 4 into I equals k minus 1. I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. So I'm looping from I equal nums length minus k minus 1. So I'm looping from num's length is 7, minus k is 3, 6, 5, 4, minus 1 is 3. So I'm looping from this position. I'm going to continue looping while I is greater than or equal to 0. So I'm going to continue to looping all the way down to 0, and each step I'm going to step down 1, and I want to move the value at I. As we loop down through I want to move it k places up. So to do that, I'll say nums at I plus k equals nums at I. So that's going to move each value k places up. So now we're in that position. Now I want to loop through our buffer and just move the value from our buffer. We're actually copying it, but I'll do it moving it. Move the value from our buffer back into our original array. So this time I want to go through the buffer again. And nums at I equals buffer at I. And that's my solution. So let's just check that it comes up with the right answer. 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm just going to think about corner cases. If I give it an empty array, what's going to happen? Probably an index out of bounds exception. And if I give it just 2 values but ask it to rotate 3 times, again we've got an index out of bounds exception. So first I'm going to deal with the empty array. If num's length is less than 2, so if nums is empty, then rotating is not going to do anything to the array, and if num's length is 1, again rotating is not going to do anything to the array. So I'm just going to return and do nothing unless num's length is at least 2. Now if our array is only 2 long but we ask to rotate it 3 times, okay, to deal with this, rotating 2 3 times is going to be the same as rotating it once, because if you rotate the array length number of times, then you're going to get back to the beginning. So what I'm going to do is just at the very beginning, I'm going to say k equals k mod num's length. So if num's length is 2 and k is 3, then we're going to set k to be 1. And then if we rotate 1, 2, 3 times, we expect the answer to be 2, 1. And there it is. So that's my solution. I'm going to submit that and see if it passes all the tests. Okay, it's finished the example test there. Now I'm going to submit it and see how it does. Accepted. So my runtime is fairly good, I think, but my memory usage is not so good. That is probably because we're rotating some of the arrays a lot, so I'm creating a large buffer. But that's my solution to rotate array in LeetCode. Thanks for watching.